The desert sun hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the abandoned stretch of highway. Maria Red Alvarez had seen trouble before, but nothing like this. Standing at the back of her rig, she tightened her grip on the pistol in her calloused hands. 5 masked men approached, rifles raised, their boots kicking up dust. They thought they had an easy target, a lone female trucker crossing cartel territory. But tonight, they picked the wrong trucker. What would you have done in Maria's position? Have you ever faced danger on the road? Let us know in the comments. If you love stories of courage, hit like and subscribe for more. The air was thick with heat and dust, the kind that clung to your skin and made every breath feel heavier. The hum of Maria's truck engine had just faded, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Out here, miles from the nearest town, silence wasn't peaceful, it was dangerous. Maria had been driving rigs for nearly a decade, hauling loads through some of the toughest stretches of road in North America. She wasn't the kind to scare easily, but even she had to admit, this situation was bad. Really bad. The 5 men spread out as they approached, their movements practiced and controlled. Their faces were covered by black balaclavas, their rifles held with the confidence of men who had used them before. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a tactical vest, stepped forward, adjusting his grip on his weapon. "You lost, Senora?" he asked, his voice dripping with amusement. Maria's fingers tightened around the grip of her pistol, still hidden behind the truck door. She had dealt with roadside thieves before, punks looking for a quick score. But these men weren't amateurs. They were cartel. She forced a smirk. Nope, just taking a break. Enjoying the beautiful local hospitality. The men chuckled, exchanging glances. The leader tilted his head, eyeing her up and down like she was nothing more than a nuisance. This isn't a place for breaks. This is our road. Maria knew what that meant. They weren't just looking to rob her. They were making a statement no one passed through without paying their toll. And if she was lucky, it was just money they wanted. She leaned casually against the truck, masking the tension in her stance. "That so?" She jerked her chin toward their rifles. "You boys need all that firepower to shake down one truck?" One of the younger men, eager to prove himself, took a step forward, lifting his rifle slightly. "You're not just one truck, lady. You're an outsider, and outsiders pay extra." Maria let out a slow breath, calculating. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and alone, but she wasn't defenseless. She had 3 things they didn't expect: experience, smarts, and the element of surprise. The leader chuckled, shaking his head. "You're funny, but let's not waste time. You'll hand over the keys, and we'll see what's worth keeping. Maybe we let you walk away after." Maria laughed, a low, dangerous sound that made the leader's smirk falter just slightly. "That's cute," she said, "but I've got a counteroffer. You turn around and walk away, and I don't put one of you in the dirt." The younger man's patience snapped. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he snarled, stepping forward aggressively. Maria finally shifted, her pistol now fully visible as she brought it up in a slow, deliberate motion. "Someone who doesn't play nice with cowards." The sudden reveal of the weapon had the intended effect. 2 of the men instinctively flinched, gripping their rifles tighter. The leader, to his credit, didn't move. But Maria caught the brief flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He hadn't expected resistance. A bead of sweat rolled down the younger man's temple. His hands twitched. One wrong move, and this dusty roadside would turn into a war zone. Maria squared her stance. "Go ahead," she said, her voice steady. "Make your move." The standoff had begun. The leader's smirk vanished. His fingers flexed around his rifle, his jaw tightening. Maria could see Eth wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman standing alone in the desert with nothing but a pistol. His ego wasn't going to let this slide. "Big talk for someone outnumbered," he muttered, shifting his stance. The others took it as a signal, their boots grinding against the gravel as they tightened the circle around her. Maria kept her pistol steady, her heartbeat a slow, measured rhythm. She could see it in their eyes' hesitation. These guys were used to scared civilians, drivers who begged and handed over their keys without a fight. But Maria wasn't scared, and that made them nervous. The youngest one, the hothead, clenched his rifle tighter. His frustration was clear, his pride stinging from being put in his place earlier. He spat at the ground near Maria's boots. "Drop the gun," he demanded, "or I drop you." Maria didn't even blink. You don't have the guts." The kid's face twisted with rage. He lifted his rifle half an inch, then click. Maria had already moved. In the span of a breath, she had shifted her aim, her finger resting firm on the trigger. She wasn't playing games anymore. The leader stepped in fast, holding up a hand. "Alto asterisk," he snapped at the younger man, his voice sharp. "Stand down." Maria watched as the kid's jaw tensed. He didn't want to back down in front of the others. His pride was bleeding out right in front of them, and nothing made a man more dangerous than wounded pride. The leader turned his eyes back to Maria, his patience wearing thin. "You think you're tough?" he asked, voice low and deliberate. "You think one little pistol makes you invincible?" Maria smirked. "Number, but it makes things real complicated for you." The leader exhaled through his nose, annoyed. "You're making a mistake." Maria cocked her head. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." The air around them was suffocating, thick with tension. The kid's trigger finger twitched, but the leader wasn't ready to let things explode just yet. He still thought he could control this. But Maria had been in enough standoffs to know the moment was slipping. The leader was losing control of his men. And when that happened, all bets were off. The kid shifted again. His stance was too wide, his grip was too tight. Maria recognized the signs. He was about to snap. Maria saw it coming before it even happened. The kid's grip on his rifle was too tight, his stance shifting too much. He was about to make a stupid mistake. She had seen that look before, young, reckless, and desperate to prove something. And reckless men with guns? They were the most dangerous kind. The leader must have seen it too, because he turned slightly, about to bark another order. But it was too late. The kid jerked his rifle up. Wrong move. Maria didn't hesitate. With the speed of someone who had been in real fights before, she moved. In one fluid motion, she shifted her pistol, aimed lower, and fired. A single gunshot cracked through the desert air. The kid screamed, dropping his rifle as he clutched his leg. He went down hard, dust exploding around him. His weapon clattered to the ground, useless now. The other men jolted back, instinctively raising their rifles. But Maria was already moving, taking control of the moment. She stepped forward, her pistol steady, her voice calm but cold. "Next one goes in someone's chest," she said. "Who wants to test me?" The leader's eyes flicked between Maria and his wounded man. He had lost control. His men were shaken, thrown off balance by the fact that their easy target had just dropped one of them like a sack of bricks. Maria squared her stance, never lowering her weapon. "You thought I was just some trucker passing through?" she said, her voice cutting through the silence. She tilted her head, letting them see the steel in her gaze. "Nah," she continued. "I've been in worse fights than this, and I don't lose." The leader clenched his jaw, his hands twitching near his rifle, but Maria could see it in his eyes. She had lost. His crew, once confident and cocky, now looked unsure. One of their own was on the ground, writhing in pain, and the woman they had underestimated was standing tall, her pistol still locked on them. The younger men in the group exchanged glances, their grip on their rifles uncertain. The reality was sinking in. They weren't in control anymore. Maria smirked, tilting her head slightly. "What's the matter, tough guy?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Didn't plan for your big ambush to go south?" The leader exhaled sharply through his nose, shifting his stance. "You just made a big mistake," he growled. Maria laughed, a low, knowing chuckle that made his eye twitch. "Yeah? Looks to me like the only mistake was yours." She nodded toward the kid on the ground, still groaning, his hands gripping his wounded leg. "Your boy here made the first move. I just finished it." The leader's men were restless now. One of them, a thinner guy with a nervous expression, took a small step back. Maria caught it immediately. The cracks in their unity were showing. "You gonna throw your life away for this guy?" she asked, pointing at the leader with her pistol. "'Cause let me tell you, he doesn't give a damn about you. The moment things get bad, he'll leave you behind just like that." More shifting. The leader's grip on his rifle tightened, but his men were no longer standing as solidly beside him. Maria took another step forward, pressing her advantage. "I bet he promised you this would be easy," she continued. "Told you that some lone trucker wouldn't be a problem." She gave a slow, mocking nod. Guess he forgot to check who he was dealing with. One of the younger men, probably no older than 20, finally spoke. "We should go," he muttered under his breath. The leader snapped his head toward him. "Shut up," he barked. "Nobody's leaving." But the kid with the wounded leg let out a strangled groan. "We have to," he gritted out, his face pale. "She's not bluffing, boss." Maria smirked, letting the weight of the moment settle in. "Smart kid," she said. "You should listen to him." The leader looked around, realizing his control had completely unraveled. His men weren't just hesitating anymore, they were actively backing away. One by one, they took small steps toward retreat, their confidence shattered. Maria gave him one last cold stare. "Walk away," she said, her voice like steel, "before I decide you're not worth leaving breathing." The leader's eyes burned with rage, but he wasn't stupid. He knew when a fight was lost. With a final glare, he jerked his head, signaling his remaining men to fall back. They hesitated only for a moment before turning, their boots crunching against the gravel as they retreated into the desert, leaving their wounded behind. Maria watched them go, her pistol never lowering. The leader paused just once, looking back over his shoulder. Maria lifted her chin. "Wrong trucker," she said, her smirk returning. And with that, he turned and disappeared into the dust, his reputation in ruins. His men would never look at him the same again. Maria exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders before stepping back into her rig. The desert was quiet again, but this time, it was her silence that held power. Maria watched as the last of the cartel thugs disappeared into the shimmering desert haze, their leader humiliated, their unity shattered. The one they had left behind young, bleeding, and groaning in the dirt was proof that arrogance had a price. She exhaled slowly, lowering her pistol but never fully relaxing. You didn't survive this long by assuming danger was gone just because the enemy had turned his back. With a practiced efficiency, she stepped over to the wounded kid. He was barely in his 20s, breathing fast, his face pale from shock and blood loss. "Don't move too much," Maria said, her voice calm. "Bullet went clean through your leg. If you don't bleed out, you'll live." The kid winced, gripping the dirt beneath him. They left me," he rasped. His wide eyes flickered toward where his crew had been, as if expecting them to turn back, but they wouldn't. Maria crouched beside him, shaking her head. "That's what happens when you follow the wrong kind of men." The kid swallowed hard. He looked away, the weight of her words pressing down harder than his wound. Maria stood, tucking her pistol back into its holster. "You got two choices, kid. You can sit here and wait for the vultures to pick you apart, or you can learn from this." She turned back toward her truck, gripping the door handle before pausing. "But next time, don't pull a gun on someone you don't understand." She climbed into the cab, shutting the door behind her with a satisfying clang. With a deep breath, she started the engine. The powerful rumble drowned out the silence of the desert, a reminder that she was still moving forward, still in control of her own road. As the truck rolled forward, dust billowing behind its massive tires, Maria glanced once in her side mirror. The kid was still sitting there, staring at the ground, lost in thought. Maybe he'd make it. Maybe he wouldn't. That part wasn't up to her. What was up to her was staying alive, staying sharp, and making damn sure no one ever mistook her for an easy target again. Because the world wasn't kind. It didn't care if you were a man or a woman, young or old. It only cared about one thing: whether you had the strength to stand your ground when it mattered. And Maria? She had spent her whole life proving that she did.